Welcome back to the channel. In this video we'll be working on my friend Pat Austin's 2009.5 Pontiac G8 GT. He currently has some CTS-V wheels on there, so you want to take advantage of the space he had and upgrade the OEM calipers to the Brembo 4-piston calipers that were used on the 2015 Chevrolet SS Sedan. So he was able to locate those. He had the brake pads, and I had some spare rotors from my former 2015 SS Sedan, so together we had all the parts. But you do need to drill out the holes for the caliper because the M12 bolts are used for the G8 calipers, and you need an M14 by 2.0 thread pitch, 50mm in length bolt to mount those onto the knuckle there. And there's the original caliper, so going to the 4-piston Brembo is quite the upgrade. So I'm happy that we're able to get it done, and we'll go through the process of drilling it out and getting them installed. This session was broken up into two different days because on the first day we discovered something about the bolts. As you can see on the left we have the list of tools and supplies, the sockets. The drill bit is the main thing because we ended up needing to drill the holes larger on the knuckle to accept the larger bolts for the Brembo calipers. So make sure that you obtain a 9/16 inch drill bit before you proceed with this if you're using the calipers from the Chevy SS Sedan, because they do require the larger M14 by 2.0 thread pitch 50mm bolts. The original bolts that we had here were actually M12s, and that's what caused us to abandon this particular day. So we went through, got out the front right caliper off, and got the new rotor on there and then caliper, and then that's when we discovered that the bolts that we had on hand at that point in time were incorrect for that particular process. So we stopped at that point, remounted the wheel, and waited until a drill bit was obtained for the drilling out of the holes, and the proper M14 by 2.0 by 50mm bolts were obtained. As we found on the first day, the bolts that need to be used for the Brembo calipers from the 15 Chevrolet SS Sedan are the M14 by 2.0 thread pitch and 50mm. The bolts that were originally ordered by Pat were M12s, which he was told incorrectly to get those, so we needed to source those, and he got the bolts for this particular attempt, but that does mean you have to drill out the knuckle so that it accepts the M14 bolts, and that requires a drill bit, and the drill bit we have here is a 9/16 inch drill bit. The drill bit that Pat ordered was taking some extended period of time to arrive, so luckily a friend of his was able to loan him this one. It's not a titanium tip drill bit, so it didn't seem to grab the metal as quickly as possible and drill out the hole, but it did work. It was very time consuming. As you can see, it took about 17 to 20 minutes per hole to drill those out on each of those, so make sure you account for that time if you're performing this type of upgrade. So we've got the first one done, so that took just around 19 to 20 minutes. This one on the lower one, I think we get it done in about 17 minutes. You can see that elapsed timer on the bottom of the screen. So make sure you have a 1/2 inch drill that's able to accept the drill bit that you need to use for this particular purpose. Pat is also using some used oil that he has available as the lubrication for this drilling process. And make sure you have a good strong back on this so you can have proper pressure on it. And I was acting as the alignment person. I was doing a line of sight of the drill bit to the hole. I was using the lug studs on the wheel hub assembly and making sure that the drill bit was parallel to those to keep the angle parallel and straight into the hole, so we don't get a hole that's elongated or pointing in the wrong direction. So after about 36 minutes on this side, it finally was done, and we had the holes drilled out to get the caliper mounted. And I'm sure Pat was quite happy to get that done. We have the holes drilled, so now we're going to get the rotor and caliper installed. So we're prepping the wheel hub assembly after cleaning it a bit. It doesn't look like it in the current lighting, but it is cleaned. And we have some fluid film installed there to help prevent future corrosion and rust. And we'll secure the rotor on there with a couple of lug nuts, and then prep the threads of the bolts are going to secure the caliper with some orange thread locker. You don't need heat to remove that, and it's as strong as the red thread locker. So then we get the M14 by 2.0 thread pitch by 50mm bolts installed. They have some washers. They're grade 10.9 bolts. And then we get those tightened up with by hand, and then we get sockets on there, and then we switch over to a torque wrench here. Now there's a couple different settings. We ended up looking up the torque ratings for the SS installation of these calipers, and it shows it to be 30 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees. for new bolts that are supplied by GM. Since these are aftermarket, we used a slightly different approach to that. I did find another listing after the installation of these that showed 130 Newton meters for non-new bolts, reused bolts. So that's approximately 95 to 100 foot-pounds. So we torqued them into that general range during this installation. And Pat is cleaning up the rotors from any grease or rust that may have accumulated since we last had our hands on them here. And he's prepping the brake pads now with the anti-squeal lubricant that came with the brake pads and applying it to the back. And then per Brembo instructions for the Chevy SS, there's some need to put some of that lubricant on the edge of those pads so they don't vibrate in the caliper. And he gets those installed, and there's a clip that goes in between them with two pins that push into it. So now he's prepping the other brake pad at this point and getting that ready to be installed. And then it's a matter of putting the clip in, getting them underneath the pin, and then pushing the pin through and then tapping the pin in all the way with a small punch. And you can see the pin on the top there. And he's about to put that clip, put the pin over the clip. And there we go there. And then it's a matter of pushing down the clip and getting the bottom pin on there so you have both in place, and then that's when you bring in the small punch and then tap the head of that pin into place to secure that. So with those in place and the bolts tightened for the caliper and the rotor cleaned up, it's ready to have the wheel installed, and this side of the vehicle is complete. Now we're just going to verify that the calipers and wheels all clear each other and the CTS-V wheels fit just fine. So we're complete on this side. We've moved over to the front left, and things are going pretty much the same as the front right, as you would expect. No real surprises here as far as the installation of the caliper. Drilling of the holes took about the same amount of time as on the front right, and Pat was able to source some protective earwear here as well. That was quite nice because that drill is quite loud after listening to it for about 17 to 20 minutes per hole being drilled. So we got that taken care of, and the caliper and rotor and everything installed. There was one problem towards the end here where we were trying to bleed the brake system, and there was a leak detected in the copper washers on the brake line. So Pat had to source some brand new ones again to replace those, and I'm happy to report that Pat has replaced them and was able to manually bleed the brakes. Its vacuum bleeder just didn't seem to perform the way he liked, but in the end the bleeding was successful. He was driving it and he's extremely happy with the performance of his brand new calipers, or new to his car calipers. If you're planning on doing something like this on your Pontiac G8, make sure you account for the drilling of the holes. It would be at least a couple of hours of time just to prep and get that completed. So 2 to 3 hours to get this task done, and you should be quite happy with the performance improvement of the braking on your vehicle. I know Pat was very happy to report that his braking performance increased dramatically with the 4-piston Brembos off the 2015 Chevy SS Sedan. So hopefully you found the information in this video helpful. If you did, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and make sure you hit that bell notification to be notified when I upload new videos like this to the channel. This is another Holden produced vehicle, so if you're interested in Holden vehicles, I do have my project car, my Chevy Caprice PPV on the channel, so check that out. And if you're looking for Chevy SSR content, check that out as well. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.